All right, welcome everybody. Um, I guess I'm here for a impromptu late night stream to try to finish up this elm-html test upgrade. So those of you who have tuned in before are probably familiar, but we are in the middle of, or hopefully towards the end of this project of upgrading one of the main testing libraries for Elm for Elm 0.19, which is the latest version of Elm. And we've got our to-do list here, but basically we've done the work of porting all the code over, upgrading it for Elm 19, updating the test suite, and we're kind of in the last few steps of cleanup here. So yeah, this will be another kind of deep dive into the internals of some of the Elm packages. And once we finish up this project, I'm going to be trying to get back to doing some regular streaming of hopefully some more fun stuff of doing more web development projects and exploring different kinds of new tech. But today we're kind of doing some chorey open source work of upgrading this elm-html-test package. So as always, feel free to ask any questions in the chat or talk about projects any of you all are working on. And I'm going to jump right into this. All right, so let's see. Where are we at? Okay, so this is the list of to-do list items that we've kind of collected as we've been working through this over the last couple weeks. So what is this one about? Do the generated values from virtual DOM tags always end up as the same values? Okay, yes they do. I've been able to confirm that, but let's take a look at what this is talking about. I think this was in the internal types file here, where we discovered one of the big differences between Elm 18 and Elm 19 is that the internal representation of the virtual DOM has changed, not really significantly in structure, but a bunch of the field names changed due to, I guess, some optimizations for kind of optimizing the virtual DOM library for small compiled binary sizes, or small compiled asset sizes. So we had to change the interpretation of those fields, and we made this record to kind of map the friendly names to the new optimized names. So this was something I think we did in the first or second stream on this project. And the question at the time was whether or not these values would always be the same every time you compile a project, or if these optimized values depended on kind of the content of the specific project they were being compiled into. I was able to get some confirmation that these actually will be constant. So we don't need to worry about those values changing. So we can refer to them, we can refer to them in our own code and always get the correct values. So that's fine. I guess the one potential thing that might come up is if the virtual DOM kernel code ever changes, then potentially all of these fields could shift around. These basically get assigned letters in the order they're used in the virtual DOM kernel code. So potentially if the virtual DOM kernel code changes, all these could break. I mean, it's a fairly trivial update to fix it, and then we would just have the elm-html test package depend on particular versions of virtual DOM. And according to Evan, who is responsible for the virtual DOM package, he's not really expecting it to ever change, or if it does change, it'll probably not change until another major version of Elm is released. So we could try to do something about like exposing these from the virtual DOM kernel package that would let us refer to these directly where they're defined without having to kind of define our own map, which might get out of sync. But I think the risk is low, and it's relatively easy to fix if it does happen. And if it does start happening, we could revisit kind of refactoring the code if that comes up. But I think there's really nothing we want to do right now. That is all like future possible work, which hopefully won't even ever be necessary. Let's see, and the same question for the virtual DOM internal field names. Yeah, okay. So this is referring to both the numbers here and then the field names. Okay. So I think there's nothing we really need to do for that. It's something that might come and cause some problems if there's ever a virtual DOM internal change, but we can deal with that if it comes up. And it certainly doesn't need to block the publishing of this package. All right, so I think this is the biggest to-do on our list, which is really find a bunch of other to-dos and see what's changed, or see which things in the code we haven't fully addressed yet. So this is the part that I'm hoping we can finish up tonight. So let's see how much work is going to go into this. I think our first step here is to get a diff of everything we've done on this branch. I guess to do that, we can just check this on GitHub. Let's see, Elm explorations test. And this should be on a pull request. Okay, so let's search through this and find the to-dos and see what we want to take care of. Let's see, we don't really care about encoding options. Encode options. We will if we want to represent things as we do for elm-html. Okay, I am not sure what this is referring to, but I'm wondering if this is part of the API surface that we can remove in publishing this now. I think this the elm-html-test used to be part of used to be divided into 3 separate packages, which we've talked about before while working through this. And I think the 2 of those packages we don't really care about exposing the API for anymore, so potentially this is something we can remove. Let's see, before we start working, let's make sure our tests are all passing. And I guess we can also make sure nobody else has been pushing anything on this branch. Okay, looks great. So what file is this in? elm-html markdown. And this is encode options. Let's see if we can just remove this and see what happens. Let's see, line 55. Okay, so encode markdown model. We might not need that either. Okay, that looks great. Let's go ahead and commit this real quick as an incremental change. And mainly this is this to-do, which we've completed by no longer needing the code. And I'll save this for later. It's not really related to this particular commit. And this is elm-html markdown. All right, so we've removed some unused code. Just to simplify things, let's check out what's next. Okay, I guess, oh, I didn't push this yet. All right. All right, what's next? Implement restrictions for raw text elements. Okay, this is not something we added. This is just in a file that we pulled in from another package. So I think we can ignore that. HTML descendant, don't expose this module. Yeah, so we did that already. And just forgot to remove that comment. Oh yeah, okay, there's a bunch of stuff. So we can kill that, we can kill that, and that's all good. Okay, that looks great. Stage that, and we removed unnecessary comments, dot comments from test HTML descendant. All right. What is next? Let's see. I'm realizing it might be easier to keep track of this in the command line. Although, I guess if we just scroll straight through this, it should all be fine. Okay, I'll just not reload this every time. Okay, and selector internal. This is also, I believe, one that we fixed. It's no longer exposed, right? HTML selector internal. Yeah, that's not exposed. Okay, and that was the first one on our list, so we dealt with that a while ago. Selector internal. Okay, so we don't need to expose this anymore. We don't need this. Don't need this. Don't need that or that. Basically, all these dot comments we added when we temporarily exposed that can go away. And let's see how that goes. All right, and this is one of the files that VS Code is not formatting for some reason. And that should be good. Okay, great. So this is the same thing. We just removed a bunch of unnecessary comments. That was HTML selector internal. Okay, great. What is next? So we did all these. Okay, and back to the top. And I think there's a few files that are large enough that, yeah, here's one. The GitHub is not exposing them. Let's just find all these real quick. Oh, okay, there's a bunch of them. All right, so before we open those up, I am gonna push this real quick and reload. Okay, so let's refresh this page. Let's expand all these up. And then we'll search through here one more time for remaining to-dos. Okay. All right, so here's a big one. Node type custom. So this is one of the types of virtual DOM nodes that we're supposed to be decoding. But I think this is something that we might not need to actually support for now. It's like we were talking about earlier, the elm-html-test package used to depend on two other packages, and I think those two lower level packages supported certain features in the Elm virtual DOM that weren't actually used or exposed for anything in the elm-html-test package itself. So like I think elm-html-test doesn't expose any way to test or interact with custom DOM nodes in your test. I guess that's a future feature that might want to be added. But for now, this is potentially something that we could remove, although our other option here is to figure out what the correct value here needs to be. And I guess if we do that, I'd like to see if we can add some tests for it. So I feel like that's the approach I want to at least look into. Let's see if we can figure out what custom node types even mean in Elm Virtual DOM and see if there's an existing test API that we could use to try to test them, and at least explore that. And if it turns out to not be useful, we can always back out and just remove this stuff. But that would mean removing some existing code, so I'd like to avoid that if possible. So let's see, that's in internal types. Yeah, here we go. Okay, and node type custom is used here. So presumably if we comment that out, the tests will still pass. Yeah, okay. So I guess the question at this point is, what even is a custom node? Define custom nodes into either Markdown or custom. Okay, so it looks like there are Markdown nodes. Do those exist even in elm-html? I'm curious about that. Decode Markdown model. What even is that? Field Markdown. Okay, so I guess we can take a look at the elm-html or the Elm virtual DOM package real quick and see if this Markdown stuff even exists in Elm 19. I don't actually know or haven't heard anything about that, so let's take a look. All right, so here's the kernel code in the Elm Virtual DOM library, which we've looked at a few times in this project. Let's see. Yeah, I don't see anything about Markdown in here. And is there even a Markdown package anymore in Elm-19? There is. But how does this work? I guess there used to be a special virtual DOM node type for Markdown. Seems kind of strange to me, but I don't actually know the internals. But if there was an Elm-18, let's see, let me switch to master here for this Markdown package. Let's see how this even works. Oh yeah, okay. So the virtual DOM, the Elm Virtual DOM package appears to have its own kernel code that can create custom virtual DOM elements. Okay. So let's double check whether or not there were any tests about Markdown in here. Source, yeah, okay, so there's nothing in the test suite right now that is checking Markdown nodes. So I guess let's see if we can add a failing test and make something useful that would force us to bring this decoder back. Let's see, so that should go in the test folder, test source, and I guess let's just add a new file for the moment, Markdown tests. Because I guess I'm not entirely sure what API we're really testing. I guess we're testing the decoders to make sure that certain kinds of virtual DOM values can actually be processed properly by the elm-html-test. So I feel like this is just a temporary name for this module. We can rename it a little better after we see what these tests actually end up looking like. All right, and all is going to be a test. All will be describe, decoding, or maybe like querying HTML that contains Markdown nodes from Elm Markdown. Seems reasonable. And I'm not sure what the name of this test will be yet, because I'm not sure what failures we can actually run into. But I think, let's see. And let's see, I guess we need to import test, exposing everything, and import expect for our normal testing stuff. All right, so I guess let's use Markdown, the Markdown package, to create some values or some HTML. So I guess let's just grab the example here. Stick that in. We will need to import Markdown, which I think we'll have to install as a dependency in just a minute. Then we will do query, which will import test HTML query as query. And now we'll do our normal stuff for writing an elm-html test, which is query.fromhtml, and then query.has, and I'm not really sure what we want to assert here. I guess let's just make sure this text is in here. And text comes from test HTML selector. Okay. And then, like we've mentioned several times on here, this particular project is not set up like a normal test or like a normal Elm project. So we actually have to maintain this top level file that lists all the tests, which is not normally needed in Elm projects, but this one's weird because we're kind of trying to write tests for the testing package itself. All right, so let's see if we got a failure here. Import Markdown. Okay, so we need to go to the test folder, npx elm install elm markdown. Just add that as a dependency of our tests. It's elm explorations markdown. Yeah, okay. Elm explorations markdown. Okay, now does this test run? No, it does not compile. All right, what's wrong? First argument to toHTML is not what I expect. Because class is an HTML attribute, I'm assuming. Yeah, this takes a list of HTML attributes. Okay, we don't really care about that for the purposes of this test, so let's just remove that. Basically, there's a function called class in the selector module, which we're importing. So that's why it was confused, but I think we can just remove that. Okay, great. So it looks like we got this internal error that the virtual DOM failed to decode. So I guess this is a test. Let's see, can process HTML containing an Elm explorations markdown node. And same thing here. It's kind of like the same description as the describe. Okay. In any case, here's the internal representation of the virtual DOM. So it looks like the number 3 corresponds to this custom stuff. And I'm curious how this works. Can we actually do useful queries against markdown nodes? Let's take a quick look at the issues for elm-html-test in elm-18 and see if there's anything about markdown. Does anyone actually try to use this for anything? It looks like no. Minor cleanup. Okay, so no issues to suggest that anyone actually really uses this or does elm-html tests on virtual DOM nodes that contain markdown. But it looks like we can at least fill in this value. And I think at the very least it's worth not having the thing blow up, because maybe no one explicitly is writing tests that check for content that's in their markdown block, but if the page contains any Elm explorations markdown nodes, then currently you would just be unable to use elm-html-test at all on those views. So I think it's worth at least making sure that the decoder doesn't crash given any possible virtual DOM values that it's possible to create. So let's see. So we just filled in this 3 for the custom node and uncommented out this custom decoder. So I think we'll get a different failure. Yeah, okay. Expecting an object with a field named facts. So it looks like these are field names that have optimized names now. So one of these is facts. I guess we've already found what facts maps to, which is D. I guess in this custom node decoder here, okay, we've got markdown node and custom node. So let's come in at this one. That's not tested yet. And decode custom node record. Okay, that's this one. Okay. And then the markdown node, this is the one we're testing now. Facts now becomes virtual DOM kernel constants.facts. And we're going to fail here next. It's a pretty obvious failure, but let's just run the tests anyway. Okay, expected an object with a field named model. There's only one other field on here, which is G. So presumably the field name model becomes G in the optimized version. So let's go ahead and add that. It's kind of a guess, but if these tests end up passing, I feel confident enough in that without having to go read the virtual DOM kernel code. Okay, and now inside json.g, okay, and that's this object, expecting an object with a field named markdown, which looks like that should be the letter B and A. Huh. We already have some mappings for those. Descendants count becomes B. It seems interesting to me that it is reusing some of these. I guess that's maybe because Markdown comes from a totally different kernel module. So I guess we should name this slightly differently. Maybe we should, I think we should maybe restructure this a little. Instead of virtual DOM kernel constants, we should perhaps call this like kernel constants. And we'll have virtual DOM in there for one. And then we can have markdown be like a separate namespace in here. And then markdown.markdown is going to be the letter B. And it looks like options is going to be A. I guess we can just fill that in now since it's listed right here. Okay, and let's format that real quick. I still have not figured out why VS Code is not formatting some of these files. Let's see, so line 207. Oh, yep, okay. Like that. And what is wrong here? On line 208, kernel constants equals, oh, this maybe needs to be indented. All right, what am I messing up here? Looking for one of the following things. Closing bracket on line 208. Whoops. Oh, here we go. Markdown equals. Great. Okay, there, that one formatted. Cool, okay. So formatting is working for this file. All right. So npm test, we are still on this markdown decoder, which is here. Okay, and then within the model, decode markdown model, that is coming from somewhere else. Okay, so that's in a whole different file. So I guess maybe we should put this set of kernel constants in a separate module. Let's go ahead and do that. This can go in test. I feel like test internal is a reasonable place to put this. In internal kernel constants. All right, so this is test internal kernel constants. All right, and let's put a little documentation in here. This module defines the optimized, or I guess the mapping of optimized field and enum names, I guess field names and enum values for kernel code in other packages that we depend on. Okay, great. So we will move that over there. Then we can now import test.internal.kernel constants, exposing those. All right, let's see where we're at. Okay, so we are back to this decoding error. We are looking for a field name markdown. This is supposed to be that field, so the optimized name of that field is the letter B. And where was that defined? The decoder for that is defined here. And in here, we need to import these kernel constants. Test internal kernel constants. And instead of this, the new name for this is now kernel constants.markdown.markdown, which is the markdown field inside of the markdown package. All right. Great. Okay, well that passed. I was not expecting it to pass because I wasn't expecting to be able to search for text inside of this node, but I guess that works. So I guess this was a working feature that just didn't have any test coverage up till now. Let's see if we can get a failing test. Let's see. Can process HTML containing a markdown node. Okay, I guess it just compares this to the raw markdown string. So I guess that's fine. All right. In that case, we have successfully backfilled a test for this markdown stuff. And what else have we done? I guess let's check our diff here. Okay, so the main point of what we were just doing was resolving this to-do. So we found the correct value for custom nodes is 3 in the new virtual DOM library. Then we just renamed a bunch of stuff. One of these code branches, this branch wasn't actually used before, but now we have a test for it. However, we've only tested this markdown node branch. We haven't actually tested this custom node branch. And this one we did test. Great, so we added a test for using Elm exploration markdown custom nodes in HTML. All right, and then we just scanned through everything here. That file looks good. Here's part of the fix. We are using the new optimized field names. We extracted this. I am going to avoid putting a type annotation on this because it is basically just a huge duplication of the value itself. And here's our new test for markdowns. So I guess this seems to me like it's kind of something within HTML query, because I guess like all we're using is query and selector. I mean, it's kind of just a test for the test.html module namespace as a whole. So let's rename this and put it inside of the test HTML query module namespace. Seems like a slightly better place. I think overall the the organization of this package is a bit messy because we've kind of like now have 4 packages that have all been merged and they all had different organizational schemes. Let's see, so that was markdown tests. We are going to, let's see, I think in VS Code I actually need to go in and make the folder first before I can move stuff. Test HTML query, and markdown tests are going to go in there. Then we need to rename this. And we need to update our master list. elm-html-test. Oh, okay. And this should actually go inside of here. Oops, I misclicked there. Okay, grab that. This replaces that. Come on, reformat. And npm test. Okay, great. So here's the new test we added, adding some coverage for decoding and inspecting markdown nodes in elm-html-test. Added it to our list of tests. We had to add markdown itself so we can write those tests, and that looks good. All right. On to our next to-do. Okay, so that addressed this. I'm pretty sure we're still in the same file, so let's go back to internal types. Okay, encode text tag. I think this encoder stuff is also not used anywhere. Let's just go ahead and remove that. And I guess let's be bold here and try just removing all this encode stuff and see if any of it's actually needed. Oops. Encode styles, kill that. And that's all. Okay. And interestingly, none of that was exposed. Okay, so that stuff is definitely not used. Maybe it wasn't even used in the previous version of elm-html-test and is just leftover code from a bygone era. Okay, that was an easy one. And all right, why did that not format? I guess it seems like sometimes this file's formatting and other times it's not. So maybe it's just like some unreliability in the plugin. All right. Great. So we removed unused encoders in elm-html internal types. Great. Okay. What other to-dos do we have in internal types? Decode keyed node. Okay, and I think this is something we actually did end up adding tests for. I think we can prove that by just like changing this to the wrong field name. And we should get at least one test failure here. If so, then I think we're covered, and this this to-do we just forgot to delete when we came in here. Yeah, okay, 8 failures, so there's plenty of tests about that. And let's see, does any of this need to get updated? Elm's Tor's keyed nodes as tuples. We only want to decode the HTML in the second property. Okay, that's still valid, and that's basically what this B means. I guess that's why, like, we could use a kernel constant, but this is kind of like not really a constant from kernel code. It's more just the like the way the compiler works. So I think this comment's good, and I think we don't need to define a constant for this, but we can remove the to-do. All right, remove outdated comment. Assuming the tests pass. If not, we can amend that commit real quick. And meanwhile, what is our next to do here? Oops. Okay, we got 7 left. I'm going to scan through these real quick. So we've got this custom node stuff. So these two are actually the same thing. Decode styles. I'm pretty sure this is decoded, or this is tested now. And decode attributes. Hopefully that's tested. I'm assuming that's HTML attributes. And then, interestingly, we got stuff about events, which I know we definitely have tests about events. So I'm not sure why this branch was in here from before, or why do we not need this? So that's kind of an interesting one. And decode tested by events. Okay. Oh, decode options. Yeah, and decode options isn't even used anymore. Let's see, did we do something about stop propagation. We did do something with that, but I guess the field names, oh no, that's this code. Value stop propagation and event. Dropping the information in stop propagation. Oh, right. Okay, so we learned, this was a few streams back, we learned that we don't need to decode the options anymore. Instead, we are just reusing a type that's in the virtual DOM package, the handler. Yeah, okay, and this handler type gives us a decoder of records of the correct type. So this is stuff we don't have to manually decode anymore. It's just kind of like converted right into Elm values for us. Okay, so I think this can go away. Decode options. And let's see, is there anything we can understand about this? So this stuff used to be another branch here. So here's where we're checking the, oh, okay, so these are just virtual DOM attributes. If they are normal attributes, okay, and these constants come from another file, so maybe we can combine those into our kernel constants package. elm-html constants. I see, so this constant is used in two places, filter known keys, and here also. And then the constants package itself has all these A values. Okay. Huh. So maybe we can check in the virtual DOM kernel code and see if there even is an event value being used anymore, and try to understand a bit about when that's used and why we aren't seeming to need it, because we do have test coverage for the event testing stuff. So let's see, event, so that's this. So the virtual DOM on is used here. So we're presuming that's turns into A0. This is like some special kernel code syntax. Oops. Yeah, so if we start at the top of the file and look for this, event's the first one, so it should get the 0. Then style is next. Then prop is A2, yep. Attributes is the next one, A3, and attribute namespace is the next one, 4. Okay. Huh. So why is it that we aren't needing to decode this? I guess it must be decoded somewhere else. Because it's never getting into this branch for it. So apparently we never get to this point in the code. So it's taking the tag. Yeah, so where do we get the messages? I guess that happens in the facts now of the node. So maybe we're decoding all that stuff when we decode the node. Let's see. So here's our decoder for nodes. We have text nodes, keyed nodes, normal nodes. So that's what we want to look at, decode node. And I think it's in the facts where the event handlers are handled. So decode facts. Oops, and that's the custom node record. We'll get there in a minute. Decode facts. Okay, I'm looking for the definition of decode facts, which is here. Here's where we decode events from event decoder. This is looking in a field called event key, which I guess is this. Decode events. So it's looking in a field there. And I guess, where is decode facts called in our normal node? When we decode a normal node, we're looking in the facts field. Okay. So the virtual DOM for this, we have our object for the node. There's a field called facts. Inside of there, decode facts. We're doing decode events, which is looking for a key called event key, which that's our A0. And then it's decoding a dictionary. Or if the key doesn't exist, it's just empty. So this produces an attribute when we call virtual DOM node. That just calls virtual DOM node namespace with no namespace. This gets a namespace and a tag, returns a function that takes a fact list and a kid list. So facts are the attributes. Interesting. Oh, okay. So I'm realizing maybe the attributes. Oh, organize facts. Okay. So here, when we make a virtual DOM node, it's getting a list of attributes, and this organize facts, I guess, is going to merge all of those together. Facts list. Okay. And here, we're kind of doing special stuff for properties and attributes. We're looping through the facts list. We're going to make a dictionary out of the list. And the fact list equals, okay, it's a linked list. So it's an elm value we get, and we're going to iterate through it linked list style. The entry is the first item. The tag is the variant name from that. There's a key and a value. If it's a property, we do special stuff. Otherwise, okay, some special handling for classes. And then we set the subfacts of the key. Okay, so it does seem like that's merging dictionaries together. So I guess I'm realizing that the attributes decoder is maybe only used for tests where we're actually like specifying the attribute selector and specifying a virtual DOM to indicate like the expected attributes in a test. So I guess that's something that probably shouldn't work. Like if we had a test that was like make some HTML and query from HTML on that, then we say query.has and then attribute like virtual DOM .on click with then some function that like returns a message. I think this is the case that would fail to decode. Which is interesting. I'm not sure what that would used to do with that. Maybe we should try to write this test. I'm suspecting that there's going to be code that would like print an error when this happens, saying like, hey, you should be using the test HTML events module instead of trying to check things in this way. So let's go to event tests and let's see. Is this the right place? Triggering events. Okay. And this should be like, shouldn't work when using selector.attribute for an event handler. I suspect there's some code to handle this that'll print a particular error message. If not, there's maybe not a sensible test we can write, but let's just write this and see what kind of output we get first of all. So we can use the same stuff, and then we'll say query dot has, I guess, attribute HTML attributes on, so that'll be adder.on. Click sample message. Okay. Let's see what that does. Oh, HTML events on. Okay, so we should have that. Actually, I guess there's a on-click function in the HTML events module. Attributes should come from selectors. And there we go. Oh, okay. OnClick produces an attribute that can produce messages, but the attribute function requires an attribute of never. Okay, so actually the API totally prevents that from happening. So I guess we don't even need that code in there. I'm gonna check real quick if we can do a trick here, doing like adder.map never. Because we never actually trigger the on-click. Oh, that converts the opposite direction though. Yeah, okay. I don't think we could even express that. So I guess the API is safe. This case I'm worrying about is you can't even write code that compiles that could possibly trigger that. So I feel happy about deleting this. I guess I'm kind of sad that there was some stuff in here that's no longer existing, but if anyone ever, like, it's just kind of a maintenance burden to have that code in there, and if we ever need it, we can kind of figure out why we need it and build the code for that. Okay, so we've dealt with those to-dos and I've cleaned up the code. let's see, I think we did two things there. Yeah, okay. Remove unused event option decoders. And I guess we can add a description here that the event handlers are decoded in decode facts. The removed code could potentially be useful when using test HTML selector.attribute with an event handler attribute, but the API doesn't allow that since this takes attribute never as its parameter. Okay, so at least a bit of explanation around that. We can stage both of those, and we can discard this because that was for a test that we didn't end up using. All right, great. So, all right, we're done with this. Back to internal types, down to 5 to-dos. Foreign elements are elements from the math-ml namespace and the SVG namespaces. To detect these nodes and handle them correctly. Right now they will be treated as normal elements. Okay, this is stuff we ran into earlier where at the higher levels, this testing code doesn't actually support namespaced virtual DOM nodes. I'm not sure what this comment used to be attached to. It looks like something got deleted here. But this is unrelated to anything we changed, so I'm just going to leave it here. All right, now we've got custom nodes. So I guess the first question is, does Virtual DOM publicly expose an API for creating custom nodes? And what even is a custom node is the other question, but if it exposes something for custom nodes, oh no, these are custom handlers. Okay, so it doesn't expose anything for custom nodes. It's just some internal kernel capabilities that some other Elm Explorations packages can use. So we're handling that for the markdown nodes. I'm not sure what other kinds of what other kinds of custom nodes are there? If we look at the list of Elm packages, let's see. I guess we can check and see if custom is used anywhere else in here. Push patches. Yeah, okay, so it looks like nothing in Virtual DOM itself calls this. It's just exposed. We found the one place where the Elm Explorations Markdown package calls this. So I guess I'm going to do a quick scan here and see if there are other packages that would seem to do something unusual with Virtual DOM. I think SVG doesn't have any kernel code as far as I know. Yeah, it looks like it doesn't. So it just uses normal namespaced nodes. Markdown we already found. Ooh, okay. WebGL might use custom nodes. Let's check it out. Yeah, okay. So WebGL uses custom nodes. So I guess let's do the same thing we did with the markdown. Let's just make a test that has some HTML with a with a WebGL node in it, and make sure that you can actually test and decode other things in that virtual DOM value, because there isn't really anything we can assert about the WebGL stuff itself. But we do want to make sure that any valid virtual DOM values actually work. Okay. Let's, I guess, make a new file here. I guess so. Let's copy this and rename this to be custom node tests that contains other kinds of custom virtual DOM nodes. Okay, and I guess we'll say WebGL. That's the known kind of failing test we can make. All right, so to do this, let's see. I guess we need to see the docs here for WebGL. And what is the simplest way we can create one of these nodes? Is there some example code here? Here's some examples. Great. Simple triangle is hopefully the simplest. And here's the view. Okay, here we go. So I guess this is the simple code. Looks like it refers to all these other values. So let's just grab all of this first of all and stick this in here, and we can hopefully simplify this in a bit. We will call this our WebGL view. I guess that's the way we capitalize things here in Elm. Okay, so we will make, we will make our WebGL view, prepare it for testing, and I'm not sure what we want to expect, but this is the part that's going to fail at the moment. So let's give that a try. And I guess we'll have to import some packages here first. Let's see. Probably need all of that stuff. All right, and we forgot to add this to our list of tests. Let's grab that. Import that here and add it to our list. Okay, we need a couple more imports. Oh, math vector 3. All right, okay, so we need to add these dependencies. These, I believe, are in the linear algebra package. Yeah, this one, and we'll need to install this too. Okay, npx elm install that. And WebGL. Oh man, and I just realized I've been going for almost an hour and a half already. So I should take a break in a minute here, but let's see if we can get this compiling. Let's see. Hey, Acapella, how's it going? Welcome to the stream. Seen you've been active in the Elm Slack lately, right? Or GitHub issues too? I forget which, but I've seen your name around a bit recently. Okay, we're missing a couple more imports from our example. From our triangle example, we need probably all of these. And that's in our custom node tests. Let's see, and usage of style is ambiguous. Okay, well, we don't really care about style. We don't actually care about any of those for this test. All we want to do is make one of these custom nodes. So we can get rid of this now. Query from HTML. Okay, so we have this float, which I think is used for animation in the WebGL example, which we also don't need for our test. We can kill that. We can just always pass, or we don't even need an argument for that either. We can just inline this and kill that, and then all of these can just be zeros, so we don't need T. We can probably remove this whole record in a minute as well, but we'll simplify that in a minute after we get this red test that we're looking for. So, Acapella, are you one of those people that's working on like a large Elm code base right now and have had run into compiler bugs in the Elm 19 upgrade? Or is that somebody else? I have been getting all the GitHub issues confused recently. Okay. So I think this might be the failure we wanted. This is a failure to decode the virtual DOM. We are trying to get a test that is going to need this code to work. So json.g. Oh, okay, great. This is a case where, what's the error? Expecting an object with a field named b. I'm pretty sure that's coming from the markdown stuff that we just did maybe like 20 minutes ago. So let's see, in the markdown decoder, there was this, which was a field called b. Oh, okay. You're still waiting for the upgrade because you're waiting for elm-html-test to get ready? Okay. Well, we're down to like the final item in my checklist here. Basically just going through all the to-dos that I added while upgrading things and checking for code that wasn't tested that we need to finish upgrading. So, yeah, we might still be able to finish, although I've been on here more than an hour already, so I have maybe like another 45 minutes in me. So we might not quite finish, but yeah, it seems like definitely this week we should be able to get this thing published. All right. Oh, have you caught most of the live streams? I've been putting them up on YouTube, but I've been just queuing like one segment every Monday and Thursday. So I think there's like another 5 segments that haven't gotten published on YouTube yet. So it's gonna be like, for people who are watching this on YouTube, it's gonna last probably through the end of the year to watch them all. Let's see. Oh, although I guess you can watch the videos on Twitch for like the 2 weeks that they're still up. Oh, which also I just got to the point of being eligible for Twitch affiliate, which I think when you turn that on, it lets you archive the videos for longer. So I'm not sure if I'm gonna turn that on yet or not, but I think I have some more options related to that. Yeah, I watched it on Twitch. Cool. Okay. So this is not the most direct error message, but I'm pretty sure this is the code right here. So let's just jump into fixing the implementation, and this is going to lead here. So this now we're going to be testing, and presumably these two fields are going to become this. Actually, yeah, we're not going to get, well, okay, we'll get a slightly different error message if we run this now. So let's just confirm that this is how it's going to happen. Yep, okay. Expecting an object with field name facts. That is this. Facts was the old name in elm-18, and the new optimized name is stored in this constant. And the same thing here for model. All right, let's see how this goes. Okay, so it did successfully decode. What does that mean? How do we write a valid test for this now? This was in event test. Oh no, sorry, this was in custom node tests. WebGL view. Okay, so I guess maybe we should just like make a div that has the WebGL view in it, and that also has some text. Hello with WebGL. And we'll check this here. So that's kind of seems a weird test on its face, but if we undo this for just a moment and don't have that code in, or I guess more appropriately, if we like comment this out temporarily, it looks like we need to import div, HTML exposing div. And text, this is html.text. Oh, whoops, no, that's selector.text. This one is HTML text. Okay, so that fails because this is not the markdown custom node, and if we turn that on, that'll prove that that's tested, and this should all pass now. Then can process HTML containing a WebGL node. All right, great. Okay. So that looks good. We can definitely simplify this a bit. So if you watched my videos from like 2 years ago when I was streaming more regularly, we did a bunch of WebGL stuff. So basically there's all these types are kind of related. They share, like we have a mesh with vertices that contain certain kinds of data. Let's see, so vertex, yeah, that's this. And then we have uniforms, which provide some like arbitrary constants to your shaders. And then you have shaders that take certain kinds of records. So we can basically simplify all these records to just be empty and like cut out a bunch of code and a bunch of useless values in here and still get a valid WebGL element. So I'm going to do that real quick. So vertex, let's just kill that whole type and instead just use the empty record. Then the shaders, uniforms will also go away. So vertex is now an empty record. Uniforms is an empty record. These are the varyings that come from the, that get passed between the vertex shader and the fragment shader. So this can also be empty record. That matches this. Uniforms is now empty record. None of this really needs to compile, I don't think. We can just have an empty main in all of our shaders. Yeah, okay. And then this was the uniforms. This is an empty record now. Mesh we can just inline. And then our fragment and vertex shader are just these empty shaders. Okay, so that simplifies all that stuff. That should still pass. And should compile is the more important part from that refactoring. And great, okay, and just VS Code plugin is not formatting that again for some reason. Whoops, okay, we just did that. npm test. Okay, so that was adding some test coverage for custom nodes. There are two kinds of custom nodes. The markdown nodes, which are treated specially, I guess, so we can actually do tests against the content of the markdown, and then other kinds of custom nodes, which the only kind of other custom node that we know about at the moment is the WebGL. There could be others, but the only possible packages that can have custom nodes are packages in the Elm namespace and packages in the Elm Explorations namespace. Oh, and WebGL is the last one alphabetically, so maybe those are the only two kinds of custom nodes at all. Anyway, I feel good about adding that test coverage. So we brought this code back, and we have test coverage for this, and we fixed this for elm-19. And here is our backfilled test for that. Here we have to add it to our list because this is a weird project with a weird test setup. And these are in the tests, so I think depending on these latest versions is fine. Okay, and we had a similar commit message like this earlier. Added a test, yeah, okay. Added a test for custom, I guess we should say non-markdown custom nodes in HTML. Great. All right, what other to-dos do we have? Decode styles. So I think this might be similar to what we found with the event stuff. Oh, okay, decode styles is used here in decode facts. Okay, so in that case, this probably is tested. And if we change this to be JKL or something like that, we should have a failing test because it's basically just going to get an empty dictionary instead of styles. Yeah, great. So we do have test coverage checking for things that have styles. So this is in fact tested. Great. Done, and we also have a commit message like that. Remove outdated comment. All right. And is this tested? Where is decode attributes used? Grab things from attributes via decoder. Then anything that isn't filtered on the object. Okay, well, I guess we can find out. This is probably tested as well. Yes, there's one lonely test, but it is a test about parsing attributes. Okay, great. So that is tested. I guess we could check and see if this empty branch is also tested. I think it is, or at least from reading the code that we read earlier in the virtual DOM native module. Yeah, okay. Any virtual DOM node that doesn't have attributes is going to hit that case. Okay, so that's definitely tested. So we have another outdated comment gone. And this one we saw that is going to stay here. Great, so we finished with internal types. Cool. Okay. I said I was going to try to take a break for a minute, so I'm going to do that now. Take maybe like a 3-minute break and come back, and I guess there's like 3 more files that we need to check for to-dos. There might not be any left, so we might be just ready to wrap this up for tonight, but I'm going to take a quick break and come back in just a couple minutes. So yeah, say hi to the chat. I'll check up on the chat after I get a glass of water, and then we will be back in just a few. So see you then.